This is Jackets Debrief, a show about the Columbus Blue Jackets, the National Hockey League, and part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's show. It's an exciting time in hockey. I mean, it's draft week. This is awesome. I'm excited for it. I think the NHL is also equally excited that a football game didn't get rescheduled to Tuesday night to try and overshadow their draft. But I'm really excited because this is that weird time of the year where a lot of action can happen quickly. You can have a lot of trades happen quickly. Obviously, we're going to have the draft, so we're going to have that going on. The story that came out this week was about Jarmo saying he almost expected there to be more activity after the draft than you normally see, which would be really cool. I'm personally really excited for it. And we've got a great show tonight as far as, and if you're listening to the podcast version, obviously you've got the great show for whenever you're listening to it. But got an awesome guest coming on from Dobler Hockey Prospects there, and I'm super excited for that. But this week in hockey, I mean, it's kind of felt very, very quiet in a lot of ways. No big stories have broken yet, except for a couple of the buyouts, which we talked last week about the potential Alexander Wennberg buyout, which we're saying should definitely be happening. We're getting a lot of rumors, a lot of things going on, which will be interesting to see where they go from here. I will say, the interesting thing I'm looking forward to, I mean, first of all, obviously draft night, getting to sit down, watch it, enjoy it. My one critique I will say before we go into some things, and we're going to do things a little out of order this week because we're going to do the beer of the week early so that I can sip it and enjoy it while we're talking to our guest. But Tuesday night, turn on the draft. It'll be on NBC Sports Network. But I'm going to say my one pet peeve before we go to the beer of the week, which is that I think the NHL is doing a massive disservice in that the rounds 2 through 7 are all going to be on NHL Network, which, if you live here in the States, isn't carried on everything, or isn't carried on every little, every sports package out there. It's kind of hard to get in some places. And it feels like a real disservice to your fans to have this thing where people can kind of enjoy it, kind of have it on, kind of enjoy what's going on, really waiting for the drafts or waiting for the trades to happen, that sort of thing. And it was something I tweeted out earlier this week about how if the NHL really wants to grow the game, something simple they can do is be willing to either just break even or even take a little bit of a loss on NHL Network to get it on as many TVs as you can get. So that's my little thought on that. The beer of the week this week, it's one I have had before. It is Great Lakes Brewing, the Edmund Fitzgerald. It is a porter. It is perfect for this time of year when things start getting a little chillier there, that's for sure. All right. It's a very thick beer. I very much enjoy this one. Quick story about this beer before we get to our guest. I keep having wait, but hey, I'm talking about beer. This is one of the first beers I ever drank where I thought, hey, I'm actually getting a taste for beer, because I tasted it and there was something that I couldn't place in it. It was the first time I placed a flavor in a beer, and it's chocolate of all things, which the Edmund Fitzgerald is a good beer. You get a little hint of dark chocolate in the back there. It's really good. I enjoy it a lot. But anyway, I'm going to do a quick word from our friends at the Hockey Podcast Network, and then we'll be back with our with this week's guest.
Do you want a true champion's perspective? Well, come on over to the Bolts broadcast, where we talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, have some friendly banter, and of course, hockey name of the day.
If you pronounce it, you can get it.
Anthony Nunschwander.
You didn't pronounce it right. Anthony
Nunschwander.
It's N-E-U-E-N. It's Neuenschwander. Anthony Neuenschwander.
Dude, I always slept in German class, so I don't know how you expected me to put that together. Come on.
You only took it for 4 years.
I took it for 2.
Took it for 2 years? Oh no, J-Do took it that long.
I took it for 2 years and was like asleep in all of German 2.
Oh, you only took it in junior high. You didn't take it in high school at all.
No. Yeah, she sent us across the hallway, and it was like me and, I don't know, 5 other people, and all we did was just goof off because it was an empty room of just us while she was too busy yelling at you guys because you guys were a terrible class.
No, we weren't terrible class. A couple people were terrible people. I'm not going to mention names. Not going to call out anybody in this pod. It was
Chase
not
Crawshaw.
Me. It was 100% not me.
Oh boy, I know a couple of those names, but yeah, it's a good point, Chase. We won't mention those here. New episodes every Monday, only on the Hockey Podcast Network.
And now, everyone, welcome to the stream here. Writer for DoberHockey.com. He writes weekly The Journey piece here on their website every Saturday. Mr. Dave Hall, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the draft. How about yourself?
Oh, I can't wait. It's been 4 months of just basically looking at the same thing, so it's gonna be fun to finally see it happen.
So you've been doing the deep dives into this. I mean, are you someone where you watch a lot of like CHL games, or how do you prepare for these kinds of things like the draft?
Yeah, I try to do what I can. I try to watch as much hockey as possible. I watch a lot of clips. Just, same as you guys, just YouTube. I have a couple sites that I use as well. But yeah, it was kind of nice because the 4 months gave you a bit more time to just really take a little bit of a deep dive on everyone. But yeah, I'm ready for it to happen and to see, if your gambles are right.
All right. Well, I'm excited to, like you said, to finally get to the draft here to see what's happening with it. Now you put out your mock draft for the week for the just recently here.
Yep.
I mean, you've got out the obvious number one there at Alexis Lafreniere, which I think everybody does.
Sure.
Just your impressions. I mean, how good is this kid going to be? What are we looking at here in your mind?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people get excited when, we hear, the consensus number one, and he's been like that for, basically the whole year. And that's fair enough. I don't see him as, a potential, generational game changer, but he's definitely going to be an extremely solid player, just versatile, can play the wing. And yeah, I don't see how he cannot be a top line guy for sure.
Okay. That lines up with what
I wouldn't go as far as, McDavid or Crosby or anything like that, but definitely a top guy for sure.
That's what I've been hearing about him. He's not the number one where it's like he's a total franchise changer, but the idea of you can get a guy at number one that you can immediately stick in and he's going to be a top end winger for your team.
For sure.
Especially for the team that's getting him, the Rangers, that's about perfect.
I was going to say, you put him with Artemi Panarin and who knows what happens, so.
Yeah, as Jackets fans, that's something I'm not. The amount of number one overall picks that have come into the Metro in the last few years, it's not fair. It's no good. So in your mind, I mean, what players should Blue Jackets fans be thinking of as far as, what names could they? I mean, I know obviously when you're trying to speculate at pick 21, it's a little bit of trying to read tea leaves there, but what kind of names should they be listening for, or who's out there they should be paying attention to? Yeah,
and you kind of nailed it on the head there. As I said, there's the general 1 to 3 consensus picks. I mean, of course, some people have it a little bit differently, but generally there's the 1 to 3. And then pretty much 4 to 11 is also pretty consensus, but it's a mixed bag. Pretty much pick your guy, and it's going to probably change depending on who you ask. But then Columbus falls into that, the interesting 11 to 25 kind of area where this is, as you can see in my article, I basically just call it, the great debate. I mean, you can kind of just pick and choose, and you don't really know where it's going to go. You have a general idea, but so it's almost impossible to even to think of who is going to go there, just because it's just so, it can go so many different ways. But I chose, at least in my mock draft, I have Maverick Bourque from the Quebec Major Junior League. He's just the one thing that the Blue Jackets obviously kind of struggle with is scoring. And at 21, it's not always easy finding a goal scorer, but with Maverick Bourque, that's pretty much what you can guarantee. I don't foresee him being, your top line 40 goal guy, but he can definitely put pucks in the net. So that's at least for, how it went in my mock draft, how I definitely can see it. But there's kind of a handful of guys that you can kind of look for. Another guy that I would love if he dropped down, I think that a guy like Tortorella would really like is Connor Zary from the WHL. I think he kind of plays that, two-way, spark plug kind of game that I think, at least, John Tortorella would really appreciate. But there's a handful of guys. I don't know, like I don't think he'll drop this low, but if you want to go goal scoring again, a guy like Jacob Perreault, he's got 40 goals. It's not out of the question to see him score 40 goals. He's probably has the second best shot in this whole draft class. He's not a complete player, so he's a bit of a risk in that department. But if you want goal scoring, there's that too. Basically, any forwards that will drop to that one are going to be good. I would probably pick a forward at this point. I think they, if there's one thing to be said about the Blue Jackets pipeline right now is that we have enough defense to work with. So.
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, defense is definitely still the strength of this team. Yeah. In that range, and it's hard to tell because again, with the draft, we're talking about guys that may play in the next year, they may play in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Do you see that kind of that 20-ish range? There being players that may step in that Jackets fans may see next season, or most of these guys going to need to spend another year ripening in the AHL or go back down to the CHL, or what would you see out of that?
Yeah, I don't know, especially with the fact that they won't be able to go down to the AHL right away. I can pretty much bank on any of those guys that I have, 14, 13 on, or maybe even earlier. But yeah, 13 on is basically, you can pretty much guarantee at least a year of marinating down in likely the junior leagues.
Now, as someone who's also just generally into hockey and everything going around with it, I mean, do you see if this is a team where they're saying they want to, I mean, would it be a good idea to move this pick, or is this something where you think, no, the talent you're going to get out of this is going to be something that you're going to want for those years to come, or is it like so many things, you just need the right deal?
Yeah, I think, if the right deal comes around, I mean, it's no secret that, especially at center, we need some top six help, and we have some pieces that we can move via defense or even goaltending, which is a pretty hot topic right now. But I don't know, like, just given the uncertainty of who you're actually going to get at 21, I think if the right pick were to come around, I don't see why not. I mean, I'd go either way with it, but yeah, if the right pick were to come around and if that was the deciding factor in a pick for a high-end scorer or a high-end top six player, then, I'd definitely be in the conversation for sure.
Now, you mentioned the goalies. Now, I'll put you on the spot because I like to make everyone have to say it.
Yeah.
If you were picking one of the two right now and you're like, you know what, this is the one I want to keep, this is the one I'm fine trading, who do you keep? Who do you trade?
I mean, it's kind of the same as my mock draft. I don't know. It's one of those things where I find that a very interesting 1A, 1B because they both shown signs of brilliance. They're both basically the same age. They're both very similar contracts. It's I don't know. It's a very interesting situation. I personally, I think I would keep Merzlikins right now, but like my decision could change tomorrow. To be honest, I think my guess is just like anyone's. I think it all depends on the circumstances of the trade and who we're looking for. I know Korpisalo obviously has a lot more experience in North America, so like people might enjoy that a little more, but Merzlikins has been a top prospect for a long time, and there's a reason for it, and he showed it in, January why he's been that top prospect. So I like him, but I mean, I wouldn't argue if you said Korpisalo. So
right. No, I can see that. I mean, there's an argument that's made for either one of them.
Yeah.
My thinking on it right now is I think you might get more for Korpisalo for two reasons. One, he's got the lower cap number. Two, he's after that playoff performance, I think there might still be some recency bias you can play on in some of these general managers and trying to make those trades, because I saw Korpisalo with his 80s save game or whatever that ridiculous 5 overtime game gave him there.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And so there you go. You've almost changed my mind already. Like it's that close.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, if he's that good, maybe we want to keep him. And then,
And there's nothing wrong with keeping them both too. I mean, if the trade's there, great. But if not, then you're happy to go into the season with 1A, 1B.
Yeah. Now, just in generally in how you view hockey and everything. So I've heard some people, I've seen these discussions going on with Blue Jackets fans about, in getting that high-end score. Because you talk about trying to get another center on there in the top 6.
Yeah.
In your mind, is it something where we just need another guy who's that top 6 quality? Does it specifically need to be a center in your mind? Where would you fall on that?
Well, I think the interesting thing with Columbus I think the interesting thing is that, they have John Tortorella as their coach. So I think, just with the system that they play, I think they play kind of a game where you don't necessarily have to be top 6 because you'll get minutes, and, he likes to shuffle and mix lines and whatnot. So I don't think it generally needs to be, an elite level goal scorer, but I just think, they just need a catalyst to be able to put that puck in the net. That's not Zach Werenski. So if they could go out and get a guy, like for me, if I were to think of a free agent offhand to go for, like if you can, find the money for him, is Mike Hoffman. Like take a little bit pressure off of, let's say an Emil Bemstrom to score those 40 goals, which everyone thought he was going to come in and do, and take some pressure off and put some pucks in the net, because ultimately that's kind of what, at least for me, what they need.
Okay, so you're on the Hoffman camp. I've seen definitely some people talk about Hoffman being a good piece to bring in. I can see that definitely. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, don't get me wrong. I'm not generally like super high on Mike Hoffman. He's a great scorer, but that's pretty much what he is for me. But I just think, if you can get him at a good deal, I think he's making just under 6 right now. If you can get him for something under that, again, it's just added benefit. Why not? Him and PLD on the first line is, pretty nice. So
now, in my mind, if they do nothing this offseason except re-sign their RFAs to longer deals, like if they can get Josh Anderson on a long-term deal,
sure.
Do you think that it would kind of satisfy that need for the big scorer, or are we not? How sure are you in what you think of Josh Anderson, especially after having a weird year like he did?
Yeah, I don't know how you could not like Josh Anderson. I mean, he's got a little bit for everyone, depending on what type of player you like. If you like an offensive guy, he's got it. If you like that, the guy that's going to go into the dirty areas and grind those pucks out, he's that. He's got it all. So, I mean, the only thing that's the issue is the injuries. So I think if they can get him signed, yeah, for sure. I think that will definitely help. I still think they might need a little bit more, just maybe like one more piece, especially up the middle. Like, they got Dubois, which is great, but after that they kind of dwindle off. Like you got Stenlin right there, that's great, but can he be a top or a second line center? Probably not. You got Wenberg. We all know what's happening with that. I don't know. I think one more center would be good. I mean, you have Liam Foudy coming in who can play center, but also he probably isn't very good for that second line center position right now.
Right. So do you think Foudy like long term might be the right guy at second line center, or just now he needs to grow into it? What
I really like Foudy on the wing.
Okay.
To be completely honest, I mean he can definitely do it, and if there's any young kid, I feel like he's it. He's very responsible, a great two-way player. So I feel like he's got, all the tendencies to be able to do it. But if you can stick him on the wing, I think that's where he's going to be most effective. So if you can fill that second line center, in my opinion, go for it, because I think Foudy is much more dangerous on the wing.
All right. Let me throw at you the guy that it seems like every offseason I get a guy in my head where I'm like, go after this guy, go really get him and bring him in.
Yep.
The guy I'm out on this year right now seems to be Max Domi. And yeah. I've heard rumors about him. They've heard rumors, and sometimes the Canadians seem to be interested in dealing him, sometimes not. In my mind, if you can get him without losing your core, and by core, I mean, even if you have to trade like the rights to Josh Anderson and then maybe throw a couple things on top of it to get you there. Mm-hmm. Do you think Max Domi fits in well with this team? I mean, just in your general opinion on everything?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I think Domi fits in everywhere. He's one of those players, just like Josh Anderson, obviously a bit of a different style and obviously a size difference, but he's also just a guy that can kind of bring you everything. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, he's one of the guys. I don't know. It seems like every year I get somebody in my head that's a center. I'm like, go after this one, go finish this one, or find a way to get him, even if it costs you maybe that first round pick or whatever. But they
and that's the thing. Like, he does play center too. So to have Domi as your second line center, I think that's great. Like, if Josh Anderson is a great player too, but we need center. Center.
Yeah, in my head, when I'm playing on Cap Friendly, I play around and I'm like, okay, who could we fit? If you could get Domi, if you could get PLD1, Domi 2, you're gonna and have them on decently length contracts. I think this team would be in good shape for a few years.
And you know who I keep going in kind of my version. So I have two kind of Domi versions in my head. So one of them, and I get a lot of flack for it, is Jesse Puljujärvi. Even though he doesn't play center, I like him. I think he's, I don't think he's the player that everyone makes him out to be. I think he's a lot better. I think he was just put in a bit of a situation. And I think even though there's been talks about him going back to Edmonton, does he want to? I don't know. I just think his upside is still extremely high. And if we could get him for, Edmonton needs some defense. They also need a goaltender. Like we Columbus has that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think he still has a ceiling that's worth it, where this guy could be, I mean, do you think his ceiling is still top 6 forwards?
I personally do. I know that there's been, some naysayers on there, but I mean, I know it's not NHL, but he, clicked at a point per game last year. He's had 24 points in the preseason this year. Like, I know points aren't everything, and he does have a bit of, liabilities on him, but I just think if you were to be able to get him for a little cheaper, I think he'd be a great addition and, a little bit of a low risk, high reward kind of player. So,
yeah, no, I can see that. And I think something that we forget a lot in hockey is, especially in the States, hockey fans, they see in all these other sports, guys get drafted. Like if somebody's drafted in the first round of the NBA draft or the first round of the NFL draft, they're going to step in and be a big contributor the very first game they play. I mean, that's the expectation is they're a contributor day one.
Yeah.
But I mean, probably one of the best players to ever put on a Blue Jacket sweater in Artemi Panarin didn't play in the NHL till he was 26.
26.
I mean that I can see that idea with Jesse Puljujärvi, and you're right. If you can get him for buy low, that I could see that. We kind of talked about on the show last week this because there was also the trade rumors going on with Patrik Laine, and I thought wouldn't it be hilarious if you get the 2, 3, and 4 picks from that year's draft on one line together, but. I don't know if I'd want to do that. The Line A stuff. What's your opinion? Because that's been a rumor that's been going around too. The Blue Jackets being in on Line A. Are you on that? Are you on that? What's your view?
No, I'm probably about as far away from that trade as you can get. I just, I've been saying they need goal scoring, and obviously he brings that. But I feel like Line A being coached under Tortorella is an absolute nightmare, and I don't know. I feel I don't feel like that trade is going to happen with anyone else but a Zach Werenski and a Seth Jones in the mix. And I just, why bother? Like Zach Werenski scores half of what Line A will score. And Line A's got too many issues. I don't know him obviously, so I'm not going to judge him on his character, but there's just too many question marks for me to even bother. I feel like you can get that production from somewhere else, and obviously his name, it stands out, and as soon as you see him, you're instantly excited. But I think the price is going to be far too high, and I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, I'm there with you on. I mean, if you have to pay Werenski, it's not worth it.
No, not at all.
And on top of that, I mean, if Winnipeg has this great dynamic goal scorer, why do they want out of it? Especially since he's going to have one more deal under team control, so they could sign him long term if they wanted. And I've seen a lot of analysis where it's like, yes, he's a really good scorer, but there's a lot of things that might be contingent on who he's playing with, and he's getting opportunities because of who he's out there with, and he's a great shooter. I mean, early in his career, there were these early comparisons that he was the next Ovechkin, and I think it's not that. I think he's a great shooter, but he's not as good as Ovechkin is at it, and then his other parts of the game may not be as good either. So I can see, I don't want to give up something big for him. If you get him on
he'll be good in stretches. He'll score 10 goals in 3 games, but then you won't even notice he's there for 20 games. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I just for the price, I'd stay far away. I'd much rather try to go for a Hoffman or something like that, where I don't have to give up Werenski.
Yeah, and then going back to our previous deal, to get either Jesse Puljujarvi or Max Domi, I don't think you're going to have to give up Zach Werenski to do it. So
no, and
so that's
what, another guy that I keep on thinking that I like, Philip Deneau. He on Montreal. If we're going to Montreal, so there's Domi, but Philip Deneau, I feel like he's I think he's one of the most underrated centers in the game and has offensive upside. And I feel like he plays a perfect system for what the Blue Jackets would run. And I just feel like he would be a nice fit on that second line center. I feel like he'd be able to own that second line and and help out.
Yeah, I can see that, because where the Blue Jackets are at, we've got all these wingers who have promise, who look like they could be really good. Because I mean, you're right. If you have PLD in the on one, Deneau on two, then you have your first line. You have Texier up there, but say you put Foudy on the second line with Deneau, or you put Cam, or you put I mean just whoever you can think of at that point. I think it does make them better. Because I mean, this year, the centers we were rolling out there, it was Boone Jenner as our number 2, which Boone Jenner is a good hockey player, but he's the best thing I can think of is they were talking about how the Tampa Bay Lightning this year kept having to add what they call the sandpaper guys to get them over the hump. We're in the opposite situation. We've got the sandpaper guys. We now need the big time goal scorers. We need the Braden Pointer. We need somebody to make it so that the goal scorers can get there. Because honestly, if you put Philip Deneau on there and put him on the line with like Bjorkstrand, that's going to make Bjorkstrand a lot better. I can see that really being a thing. And I mean, Deneau's going to contribute what he does on it, and it might also help with the phrase I've heard, which is it may be time for the Blue Jackets to not be the youngest team in the league. And Philip Deneau may help with that a little bit. So
and what do you think about Mikael Granlund? UFA, bad season last year, probably going to sign for a little bit less because of that, but did only have one bad season, like
Granlund I find interesting. The guy who's quickly becoming the analytics darling of Craig Smith, I find interesting. At this point, I think there are so many. I think between both of them, you have upgrades over what we have now.
Yeah,
and I think to make all this work, one thing that I think is a no brainer you do is you buy out Wenberg tomorrow or as soon as you can, because it just. And I am fully mentally prepared that we're going to buy out Wenberg and then he's going to go somewhere else and be great.
Yep.
But I don't at this point. I don't care anymore. I have fallen for that trick too many times already. So I can deal. I think the fix here is you go and you find a center, and like you said, if it's a Philip Deneau, if it's a Craig Smith, if it's any one of these guys, they're going to be upgrades over what we have it too.
Sure.
So I mean that.
I just, as long as they stay away from more bottom 6 role players and just get a little bit of help. If anything, just help out guys like Emil Bemstrom. Last year frustrated me for Emil Bemstrom only because we just didn't have anyone. Obviously, injuries played a massive part in it, but I would have just loved, after he was struggling for a bit, to let him go down to the minors for a bit, get some confidence, score some goals. Because it was just, it was tough watching it, because he has this potential, that boom bust potential, but he has a lot of pressure on him. He was the top scorer in the SHL the year before. People think he's the savior coming in, and it's just a lot of pressure, to score all those goals. So,
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's one of those things where the Blue Jackets for a while have felt like the answers might be here, and they just need to get older and more experienced.
Yep.
Except I don't know if the answer at center is, like you said, Foudy might be. And now we start asking the question of, okay, well, we're about to sign PLD to either a bridge deal or a big long-term extension.
Yep.
How many of those years do we want to use up with somebody getting used to being the second line center?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, that's the thing. And whereas if you get a Max Domi or a Philip Deneau, if you go get one of those players, I mean, even if you get Danault for the 1 year he's got left on his deal, and in that year you either, you can kind of get another deal with him maybe, or that's the year where Foudy gets better and more comfortable, that would be something. It really feels like there needs to be a big investment in that forward group. And I mean, where it's tricky is the one thing where Jarmo hasn't always done great is his free agents. Cause I mean, Riley Nash has been fine as like a third to fourth line-ish center, but that's not what you want. So,
and that goes back to what I'm saying. Stay away from the role players. There's enough of them. They're all the way down to the ECHL. We got them.
Yeah.
So
we've got all that. We've got all the sandpaper. We need a I don't even know where that metaphor goes at that point. Does it become a hammer or a chisel or whatever it is? But
totally,
that's where we are. But Dave, it has been great having you on. I really enjoyed it here. If anybody wants to find your stuff, it's at doverhockey.com. What's your Twitter again? If people want to follow you there.
1289.
All right.
HALL 1289.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on, and we appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again soon.
That was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We just finished a really exciting season of hockey here in Columbus, and the future is bright with all these awesome young players, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Alexander Texier, Liam Foudy, Elvis Merzlikins. But now you've got a new problem. How do you get jerseys for these guys? Well, we've got you hooked up. CoolHockey.com/THPN. And since CoolHockey.com doesn't outsource jerseys for customization like competitors, they're able to offer the best deals, best quality, and pricing and time on your delivery. So remember, when you need a new jersey, CoolHockey.com/THPN for our exclusive discount there. Remember to use the discount code THPN, CoolHockey.com/THPN. All right, guys. So we're going to wrap up the show here. It's been a lot of fun this week. Again, thanks to our guest, Dave Hall there. Again, this Great Lakes Brewing Company, the Edmund Fitzgerald, this is some good stuff. I am a big fan. It's great for these October days like we're having now, where it's kind of cool and chilly. But you want a beer, but you're like, you know how summer beers are. There's that light crispness in there. It's good for then, but for now, no. It's great for days like today where hey, it's a fall Sunday and the Browns win, which is beyond bizarre for me at this point. I was, if you watched it at all, it was one of those games. It felt like, so imagine, the Blue Jackets playing game where they were up on the Leafs 3-0 and then the Leafs come back and win. Imagine that game today, except that the Blue Jackets had then won in overtime. That's what the Browns game was like today. They took a huge lead. They nearly blew it, and then they didn't blow it. It was incredible. It was mind blowing. You fully expect the Browns to do that kind of stuff, but they didn't this week, which was great. So I'm doing that. I'm enjoying with the celebrating with the Edmund Fitzgerald here. One other story I want to talk about this week, because you guys know that I tend to fall into these things where I like to talk about hockey media and stuff. It's a big thing that I really enjoy. It was another story from the folks at Front Office Sports here. ESPN wants back in on NHL TV rights after hockey hiatus. We've talked about this for a while. I have said pretty conclusively that if NHL wants to grow in the United States, they want to get back on ESPN. And I understand a lot of people are canceling TV and they're getting off that stuff. But even then, ESPN drives the sports conversation in this country, between their online presence, between their Twitter personalities, between their shows and everything else. They drive the sports conversation in this country. And if you can get them talking about any real amount of hockey, you do it. And you do that by getting on their networks. Now, this goes into a little bit of the detail on it, essentially saying that NBC really wants to keep them, but the story is the NHL really wants to be on at least two networks. It also mentions Fox and CBS is potentially trying to get in on it. That's possible. I mean, CBS at this point, because they've lost the SEC, maybe they have some more sports media money they want to spend somewhere. If I'm the NHL, what I want to do is I want to have a multi-network relationship where you have NBC maybe still as your premier partner because they really value you in some ways. Again, I know in other ways they really haven't, but you keep them on, you give them your game of the week on Sundays, you give them the Stanley Cup final, and then you have a second network like ESPN, and I think ESPN's the right way to go with it, where they have their own game of the week maybe, or like a Tuesday night game or the Wednesday night game or something like that. And then they get, like, in the first round, they get 3 of the playoff series, 3 of the 8. And then in the second round, they get 1 of the 4. And then maybe they get 1 of the 2 conference finals, which would be cool for 2 reasons. One, it would allow the NHL to, it would be really great so many times in the first round, especially when it's on traditionally, not the way it was this year. Of course, even more so the way it was this year. You'll have a game go into overtime, and then it's like, oh, that game's on NHL Network or the NBC Sports app. Well, if you have some games, now that may still happen, but if you have a decent amount of games showing on ESPN, you won't have that problem too much here. So it's just a thought. And maybe you'd get better deals out of what's going on, like with the draft this week, because like NBC could have round 1, and then ESPN could put rounds 2 through 7 on ESPN Plus, or they'd put it on ESPN News for the night or something. It would allow you to get something out there that has more coverage than an NHL network. Anyway, guys, it's been great talking with you. Again, really enjoyed the episode of this week. Hope you all look forward to the draft. I'm very much looking forward to it. But thank you very much. Good night, and go Jackets. Please subscribe to the show, follow us on Twitter @JacketsDebrief, and thank you for listening.